For years, I think I've been like a vulgarian, and I thought it was Waiting for Godot, but it is not? Right,
Only for vulgarians.
yes.
It's whatever. Beckett did not like being dragged into the debate. It just made him irritated. So if people asked him how he pronounced it, he told them to pronounce it however they felt like it. But it's notable that in every production he directed, whether it was here or Germany or in Ireland or in England, it was always Godot.
Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll turn the mic over to my colleague Brent Lang, Variety's executive editor. He interviewed Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves on stage on Monday about their partnership in Waiting for Godot, the latest staging which just began its Broadway run at the Hudson Theater. That was Alex Winter you heard in the cold open discussing with Brent the pronunciation of Godot. We also hear in this episode from Ellise Shafer, senior news editor in London, about the reaction in the UK to the Ozzy Osbourne documentary that premieres this week. She grew up in an Ozzy-loving household in the Midwest, and she has perspective on what this son of the UK's Midwest, Birmingham, meant to his fellow Brits and fellow rockers. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. The Motion Picture Association is not amused. Sora 2, the video AI platform, is fueling an explosion of copyright infringement of MPA members' work. Basically, clips from your favorite movies being altered. The MPA put out a statement very late East Coast time on Monday night. On this aspect of AI, the studio's interests are aligned with those of artists. Wholesale reproductions of copyrighted material are not cool. As MPA Chairman Charles Rivkin says, quote, well-established copyright law safeguards the rights of creators and applies here, end quote. Obviously, more to come on this. A24 had a surprise on Monday night for New York Film Festival attendees through a surprise world premiere for the new drama Marty Supreme starring Timothée Chalamet. Director Josh Safdie told the crowd he'd just finished the film at 2 a.m. the night before. Chalamet plays an aspiring ping pong champion. The Safdie brothers are really having a moment. Benny Safdie has been raking in accolades for The Smashing Machine since the Venice Film Festival. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. Now we turn to conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Brent Lang did a terrific interview with Waiting for Godot stars Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. I've been saying it wrong all these years, too. For those of us of a certain age, the idea of the stars of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, starring as Vladimir and Estragon, is a punchline from an old Johnny Carson Tonight Show monologue. But it's happening. Alex Winter, as you'll hear, grew up on stage. Keanu talks about Commedia dell'arte, and the real-life friendship between these two comes shining through.
How did the idea of appearing on stage and reviving this show come about?
I was in a hotel room around 1 a.m. with jet lag in London, and I was in a fugue state, and then something came from the universe and said, do Waiting, and I said Godot back then, Waiting for Godot with Alex. And so then I FaceTimed him, and then this part I'm about to make up. He said, no, it's Waiting for Godot. And I was like, cool, do you want to do that play? And he was like, yes. And then we went on the journey to kind of make the dream real, and Alex kind of spearheaded. He was, of course, being experienced with Broadway, and he was like, great idea, we need a director. And Alex went on that, and, gratefully we connected with Jamie Lloyd, and who's amazing.
So, what made you think of Jamie Lloyd for this, Alex?
He had done a lot of work with Pinter, who was kind of the natural successor to Beckett, but also is a real visionary. And Keanu and I had spoken early on about wanting to do a version of this that was sort of approached Vladimir and Estragon in a grounded way. So they felt like human beings and not like kind of academic caricatures in a revered historical document. And Jamie's work is very, very good at both being visionary, but also being very true to human emotion and character.
I read Vladimir first, and then I read Estragon and vice versa, just to see who would play who. And we did that in one day. Poor Jamie had to hear that reading of the play twice. But anyway, and we learned a lot that day, I think. And what really came across was, and this is something Jamie remarked upon, was that our friendship, our history together really suits the play because of the friendship and connection and history that the two characters have.
Like Keanu said, it's been an asset for us in this play, which is very challenging to have that kind of shorthand.
Are there similarities between Bill and Ted and Beckett? What ways was your experience on those films helpful when it came to doing this production?
Gosh, which one do you want? I'll speak about the physical. I mean, when we did Bill and Ted, we both kind of fell into had a classical approach in terms of panto or commedia dell'arte, and making these characters flesh and blood.
I'm not sure if it's Bill and Ted as much as a consistency between Keanu and I and Bill and Ted and these guys, but mm, I always say that the only real difference between Bill and Ted is that Bill thinks he knows everything and has absolutely no idea about anything. And Ted doesn't think he knows anything, but actually always knows what's going on. And Vladimir and Estragon are very similar. I mean, the play's arc, such as there is one, is sort of Vladimir coming around to understanding Estragon's point of view, which in the case of this play is quite tragic. There's a lot of Keanu and Estragon, and there's a fair amount of me and Vladimir. So, and that carries through the Bill and Ted movies.
How difficult is it to learn the lines because the dialogue is kind of elliptical?
Yes. It is. It's a monster. I mean, it's a monster of memorization because it defies Beckett is a cheeky bugger and it defies logic intentionally. Like there are sand traps in every line almost. Like, no, you think it's going this way. No, it's going to invert. And I found for myself that the way I ended up memorizing was almost more like memorizing a piece of music. Like it's this rhythm. That's how, for me, that's why Godot made so much sense. Because Godot, Pazzo, Go-Go, all of those rhyme. And I would keep hitting a brick wall if it was like Pazzo, Go-Go, Godot. I was like, well, that doesn't work, you know? So it's a lot of it is alliteration and rhythm and rhyme and repetition, and a consonant starts here and then it repeats there. It's bananas.
Do you find yourself just thinking about the lines constantly, even now? Or
Oh yeah, this for me. I mean, I think for you as well, Alex. If I can speak for you, the life and art intersectionalization of this play is quite strong, and it's also fun. I mean, part of the process is trying to get comfortable, internalize lines. What do they mean? And so I know for me, you'll be in a moment and you'll just come up to like, nothing to be done. Or off we go, or
You kind of end up living, dreaming, sleeping, reciting the dialogue all the time, all day, every day. We're just kind of in Godot land at this point.
and Jamie, was saying in rehearsal, like it's a play of 3,000 moments.
Yeah, that's
So he kind of gave us the heads up. He's like, it's going to be this moment, then this moment, then
yeah,
this moment, then this moment, this moment. And you must be precise,
yeah.
confident, and commit.
The upside of that is it doesn't get rote. I grew up doing long-running Broadway shows, and shows where you're on stage every night, 8 shows a week for like 3 years, and you get bored,
you, you were in Peter Pan and
and King and I.
King and I?
And you'd be like, gosh, I've done this so many flipping times. Like, how do I find a way into this that's not rote? That is so not going to happen on this show. It's just not. It's just every night is like, oh God, okay, let's go. Boom,
Let's Godot.
Let's Godot.
Let's Godot.
Play is designed as a trap for the characters and the audience, and it feels that way, but it doesn't feel oppressive to act in. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a brilliant design, I have to say.
The play is very funny, but it's at some level about refugees and some unseen conflict. I mean, did it feel kind of more topical than you'd remembered?
It is timeless, and it's talking about the human condition and human experience. That doesn't seem to change much.
Yeah.
I mean, he even has the line in the play, let's not talk of the past generations. No, let's not talk about the present. Let's not talk about it at all. But what that intimates to me is also that the conflicts, the questions, the relationships, our friendships are universal and through time. And so a play to me is one of those classics that can always be topical and finds itself quite topical today.
It's heavy. I mean, sure, there's funny moments in it, but the play came out of Beckett on the run from the Nazis during World War II, and he was in the French Resistance, and we're obviously refugees, and we're obviously in some autocratic or fascist environment that's dangerous. And, to Keanu's point, that's a timeless thing. We have existed through time. We're in kind of a time slip. We talk a lot about time being stopped and wanting to unmoor ourselves from time. So the idea is very universal, but it is very timely. To say yes to doing this play is no joke. And I'm glad we had 3 years to get prepared for it. It's like climbing Mount Everest every night.
Now we'll hear from Ellise Shafer in London about the reaction in England to this week's release of Ozzy, No Escape from Now. It's a documentary about the final years of Ozzy Osbourne's life as he battled illness and the march of time after a life lived on stage. Ellise Shafer, thanks so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Ellise, you are well established on the Variety masthead as a big music buff, and you reacted like much of the world in July when Ozzy Osbourne died at the age of 76 after a life lived in public, and especially the last couple of years were pretty hard with some illness. This week has seen the premiere of a documentary on the famous Black Sabbath frontman and solo artist for many years that was just so timely because it was in post-production as he went into his decline and unexpectedly died during the post-production. As I can tell from your coverage and the coverage of others in our London bureau, this has been a huge moment for the UK. Ozzy Osbourne was a proud son of Birmingham. As someone who grew up with him, appreciated him as somebody that your parent liked, and oh my God, this music actually is cool. What was it like for you to be there in the UK and process how the nation was losing this favored son?
My dad, from a very young age, showed me all of his favorite bands, and he was very into the hair metal scene in the 70s and 80s and big Sabbath fan. So I grew up listening to Ozzy, watching Ozzy's reality show, all of that. And I actually was with him when we found out the news in London. They were here to see another iconic British band, Oasis. And we just sat down for a really lovely steakhouse dinner, sort of at a very classic London establishment. And there was actually a sign that said no phones. So we were all unplugging, having our steak, and a man next to us at the table next to us glanced down at his Apple Watch and audibly gasped and said, Ozzy Osbourne just died, and kind of announced it to this restaurant. And just seeing the reaction of everybody in there, it was mostly Brits in there besides us, and everybody got a little emotional. We all sort of bonded in that moment over finding out this news together. And the rest of the dinner, we talked at the table next to us. We talked to each other and just shared memories of Ozzy. And like you said, truly just such a beloved figure, not only in the UK, but around the world, but especially here. He is this hometown hero. He was a working class man, grew up in Birmingham, and just truly rose to such great heights, but did struggled with substance abuse, got famously fired from Black Sabbath in 79 because of that, and then was also a reality TV pioneer. I mean, there's so many facets to Ozzy, and of course his enduring love for Sharon. And we really get to see all of that in this Paramount Plus documentary that is out. It's titled No Escape from Now, and it really just gives such an intimate close-up look at the past 6 years of his life, which he's undergone a ton of health struggles. I think one of the biggest things I took away watching this documentary is just how much he was unfortunately in pain, but also how much wanting to get back on the stage really drove him. It's so sad, but also beautiful and poetic that he did pass away just a couple weeks after his final concert. I think that he had to do that. He had to make it for that. And then he was able to let go. It's a beautiful story.
Our coverage describes that Billy Corgan, so many other musicians came out to make sure that he could have his last show. We saw something similar on Chris Christopherson a couple of years ago before he passed. Roseanne Cash literally walked him out on stage so he could have that moment. Your heart catches when you see that. And to see that kind of love. Ozzy, for all of his theatrics in the 80s and the crazy hair and all the showmanship and the pyrotechnics, he always had the respect of musicians because the music was always there, always pushing the envelope. And boy, I remember the Osbournes. I can just tell you, MTV had no idea what they had. If anybody tells you that, it's revisionist history from night one of that show. You realize that not only was it a new era for Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne and their kids, but it was a new era for television in terms of putting a lens on a famous family. But I digress from the main point that the Gen Xer in me must make, which is when I was in junior high and early high school, there was no every kid, mostly boys, but some girls had the jersey shirt, the Ozzy Osbourne classic black and white jersey shirt. If you didn't have one, you did not have social status. It was either Ozzy or Def Leppard. British bands were having a moment back then. They were in the early 80s.
This documentary, they didn't know that he was going to pass. They were in the middle of editing when that happened. The director, Tanya Alexander, she mentioned that it was a decision they had to make whether or not to push forward with the documentary, but Sharon told them that they needed to keep going.
And to your other point, a life on stage takes a physical toll. I can only imagine what the inside of Ozzy's throat looked like. Polyps, throat cancer, that's very real. Again, a lifetime on stage and in the public eye. Well, Ellise, thank you so much for coming to us from a soundproof booth in the basement of our London office.
Thank you, and rock on. That's what Ozzy would want.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Today marks 2 years since the Hamas terror attacks that ignited the war in Gaza. There are 2 dramas premiering tonight that address this somber anniversary. Tonight on HBO Max is One Day in October. On Paramount Plus, there's Red Alert. Reviews of both can be found on Variety.com. As for Variety, we're gearing up next week for activity at 2 events that start with the letter M. MIPCOM, the International Content Sales Gathering in Cannes, France, and Middleburg, the film festival in Virginia. More to come on both. Before we go, congrats to Louis Provost. He's joined Sony Pictures as Executive Vice President of Production. He's spent the last 15+ years at Walt Disney Studios. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Brent Lang and Ellise Shafer. Sticks, Nicks, Hick, Picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.